Welcome to the School of Wisdom, a weekly podcast produced for the Bible Bistro, studying the book of Proverbs chapter by chapter. My son, hear the instruction of your father. Forsake not the law of your mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace to your head, and chains about your neck. Now, this week's lesson. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to the School of Wisdom podcast here in the Bible Bistro. And again, this week I am broadcasting from the dining room of the Bible Bistro. So if you hear some outside noises and other things that might happen, such as phones or doors or whatever, you just need to know that we're in a live place here. It's active around this house. So this is the School of Wisdom, and this week, Proverbs chapter 20. Proverbs chapter 20, I'm going to call this a man's chapter. And if you want to go to my-dailydose.com, there in the blog section, you can find outlines for all of these chapters. Today's outline is right there in the blog roll, so just go there and grab it. You can download it. It's a PDF. You can get it for yourself, leave it on your machine, print it out, however you want to do it. Just follow along with us and keep it for yourself for later on if you want to study some more. And I'm sure you'll see things in these chapters that I don't see, so it's just a good exercise for all of us to be involved in this kind of study. The Proverbs are so filled with wonderful wisdom. And of course, we've discovered and uncovered quite a bit of it as we've done this study. Today we're looking at chapter 20, and you'll notice that in this particular outline, I've got it divided up into 4 sections, and this is just my division. Wine and bread begin the first and the third section, and then divers weights begins the second and fourth section. So I tried to find things that were similar in size. These pericopes are kind of close in size, but the thing that overwrites this chapter, the characteristic of this chapter, is how many times these proverbs are mentioning a man or men. If you look at the outline and you see I've got lots of different colors for different themes that are going on here, you'll notice that men are mentioned, or a man is mentioned. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different times, and that's in 30 verses. We're getting close. It's a lot. It's a lot of occurrences compared to the other ones that we've looked at. So we'll just call this the man's chapter. Now, ladies, that doesn't mean that you can, check out here. This is for men, but it's for everybody, right? And we begin with something that I think a lot of men, maybe most men, deal with, and that is the subject of addiction. Wine is a mocker. Strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. I say the subject of addiction, but particularly we're talking about alcohol here. Wine is a mocker. What exactly does wine mock? Well, wine mocks men. I was in a restaurant last night that is touted as a wine bar, and they serve a lot of wine in that place. They have this great big counter, this big bar as you walk in. And that's, of course, their big feature is they have some of their own vintages and so forth. I guess they have their own winery. And people were packed shoulder to shoulder all the way around that huge bar, and they were all drinking wine. And I thought of this verse because I just taught this verse at church, that wine is a mocker and wine mocks men because men drink it. And what does wine do when men drink it? It makes a fool of them. It mocks them. And so does strong drink. Some translations will have this as beer. Others, other different kinds of stronger alcoholic drinks. Whoever is deceived thereby is not wise. Now, let me just be open here and tell you that I don't participate in drinking alcohol. So I abstain, completely abstain. And I do so because wine is a mocker. Why would I have a mocker in my house? Why would I participate in allowing that thing to mock me? Why would I participate in allowing beer or strong drink cause me to be a brawler, right? So there's no point in having it in the house. There's no point in me participating in it because I know what it is. And a mocker, of course, is something that we see in the scorner. The scorner mocks, but who does he mock? He mocks God. What does wine mock? Wine is a scorner, but who does he mock? He mocks men because men drink it. And I always ask people that tell me that they're drinkers and they're Christians, I always ask them, how do they do it? How do they keep from being deceived? Because if wine is a mocker and strong drink is raging, how is it that you're not deceived by it? Because it's like a snake, he'll tell us later on in the book of Proverbs, and you never know when a snake's going to bite. You don't know when it's going to strike. And once it strikes, well, then it's too late. So how can you tell? Well, the best way to protect yourself from a snake or from the mockery of wine is just not to be around it. So that's the very first thing he leads with, and I think it's important because this is a man's chapter, and so many men think that it's manly to drink. It's actually not. It's foolish, and it can lead you into lots of harmful places. You go on and you read through these first 9 verses, and you notice the proliferation of Proverbs here that talk about a man. Verse 3, it's an honor for a man to cease from strife, but every fool will be meddling. Verse 5, counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Verse 6, more men will proclaim everyone his own goodness, but a faithful man who can find? The just man walketh in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. You see how many times we have the word man here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different times. And let's go back up to verse 3. It's an honor for a man to cease from strife. Boy, that is so true, isn't it? I was thinking the other day that this is really good for pastors. A pastor should know this verse because so many times we are tempted to engage in strife with the people that we pastor because they don't do what we say, or they don't, take to heart what we're teaching, or they, do something foolish, or they attack us, and we want to defend ourselves. But notice verse 3, it's an honor for a man to cease from strife. Every fool will be meddling. Pastor, you don't want to be called a fool. So let's not be meddling with strife. Let's not be engaging wine. Let's find honor and cease from strife. The just man walks in his integrity. So let's be a just man. Let's walk in integrity. And if we walk in integrity, then the things that we've read about here are not going to be part of our life. Verse 6 and verse 9, I think, really go together. Most men will proclaim everyone his own goodness, but a faithful man who can find? Of course, most men will proclaim everyone his own goodness because we think we're all good. Everybody thinks they're a good person, but there's not a good one among us. There's none good, the Bible tells us, no, not one. But men will proclaim everyone his own goodness. And if you look at verse 9, who can say I have made my heart clean? See, this is why this is so dangerous, especially for men. We want to pretend like we're okay. It's all good, everything's going to be fine. No, it's not going to be fine because there's sin. That's at the heart of all the trouble. And if we proclaim our own goodness, then we cover up the fact that we're sinners. We don't examine it closely. And if we don't examine it closely, well, then we're not going to come to Christ because we won't ever see our need for cleansing. And who can say, I've made my heart clean? I'm pure from my sin. Notice that's my sin, not somebody else's. He's talking about mine. Very personal thing here, isn't it? Who can say that? Nobody can say that. Who can say they're good? Nobody can say they're good. Remember what the rich young ruler said to Jesus? He said, good master, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus said, why do you call me good? There's none good. Notice that. None good but God. And of course, Jesus then is implying something. He's implying that he's good, but the rich young ruler didn't see that yet. He didn't understand him to be not only Lord, but Christ. Now we go on to the second part, the second division, 10 through 16. Divers weights and divers measures, both of them are alike, abomination to the Lord. Now if you look down in verse 23, we have something very much like verse 10. Divers weights are an abomination unto the Lord, and a false balance is not good. So we're talking about, in both of these verses, we're talking about dealing with an above-board approach to business. So a lot of business is done under the table. We want to shave off the edge of the coin, to make it weigh less. We want to mess with the weights in the scale so that we can charge more. Maybe we'll make it heavier, or we'll make it lighter, or however it is that will garner us more income from the thing that we're selling. Divers weights and divers measures. Christian, this is not for you. You're not to mess with the standards of business, because that is an abomination. The Lord sees that as an abomination. Every child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. I think this just is an explanation of what we can see not only in children but in adults. If we're able to see in a child that his work is pure and right or not, then surely we can see it in an adult. I think we could have a how much more statement here. Every child is known by his doings. How much more are adults known by their doings? Because if you can see it in a child, you can surely see it in an adult. And being able to see that is an important thing. It's important for a man to see it in his children and in the children of others. And it's important for a man to see it in himself and in those around him. You need to know that. And notice how that goes right there with verse 9. Whether his works be pure. And verse 9 was talking about purity from sin. What are we talking about here? He's known by his doings, whether they be pure. Well, we know that his doings are not going to be pure. His works are not going to be pure because he's not pure. But it's the effort that is being implied. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord hath made both of them. Again, not only is the psalmist a creationist and confirmed, but also Solomon is a confirmed creationist. The Lord made the ear and the eye. We go on to 13, 14, 15. We're still talking about labor and economy. Of course, these are things that men are engaged in every day. Love not sleep, lest thou come to poverty. Open thine eyes, and thou shalt be satisfied with bread. It is not, saith the buyer, but when he is gone away, then he boasteth. There is gold and a multitude of rubies, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. Take his garment that is surety for a stranger. Take a pledge of him for a strange woman. You see, all of these deal with your personal economy and how you're treating others. And again, in 16, of course, we're looking at that whole idea of being a surety. That's not a good thing. We've seen that already in several places throughout the book of Proverbs. Suretyness is a problem, and men need to stay away from it. Verses 17 through 22 comprise the third section, bread of deceit. It is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth shall be filled with gravel. Yeah, that's right. Deceit is always sweet, but it always turns out to be something that is, ill. Filled with gravel. That's an interesting word, that word gravel there. It only occurs twice in the entirety of the Hebrew text. And here's one of those places. Every purpose is established by counsel, and with good advice make war. He that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets. Therefore meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips. Whoso curses his father and his mother, his lamp shall be put out in obscure darkness. Verse 20 goes right along with a verse that we had in 19, near the end of the chapter, that talked about the son who curses his father and drives away his mother. So here it is. He's cursing father and mother. Well, it says of that man, his lamp shall be put out. Again, remember, we're talking about men here. Deceit is sweet to a man. And then notice that we have lots of things here. The talebearer, the one who curses father and mother, a hastily gotten inheritance, that can't be good. And then there in verse 22, say not. Now this, who can say? Here in verse 22 we have, say not, I will recompense evil. But wait on the Lord, and he shall save thee. And it also, I think, should be compared to verse 3. It's an honor for a man to cease from strife. Because if we're ceasing from strife, then we must be waiting on the Lord to allow him to save us. Let the Lord do your fighting. Don't fight yourself. And you'll notice I've marked and highlighted on the outline where the Lord shows up here in this particular 20th chapter. And we have the Lord here 5 different times. So don't recompense evil. Pastor, be a man of honor. Cease from strife. Let the Lord do the work. Let him fight the fight. He'll save you. And then the final section in 23 through 30, it begins with divers weights again. Now, I've already made a comment about that. They're an abomination to the Lord. A false balance is not good. Man's goings are of the Lord. How can a man then understand his own way? It is a snare to the man who devours that which is holy and afterward vows to make inquiry. A wise king scatters the wicked and bringeth the wheel over them. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the belly. Mercy and truth preserve the king, and his throne is upholden by mercy. Notice verse 27, the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. That idea of the spirit of man is the breath of man. And remember, at Adam's creation, God breathed into man, and he became a living soul. So the idea of the breath of man is his soul, that thing that the Lord lit, that candle that the Lord lit when he breathed into man, now is, what does it say there? Searching all the inward parts of the belly. So the Lord is looking. He's got his eye on you, and he knows what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're saying, what you're speaking, your motivations. He knows it because he's given you that spark, that flame of life. Now, there's no goodness in you, but the Lord, because he gave you that spark of life, he's looking and he knows what's happening. The glory of young men is their strength, and the beauty of old men is the gray head. Of course, we can see that in life, can't we? Young men are always proud of their strength. They're always strong. They're lifting weights. They're running. We're in a we live in a health-crazed society. And so the beautiful, strong, adorable people with the beautiful bodies, they're the ones that are, you don't put an old man on a cover with a beer belly, do you? On a magazine cover. No, that goes to the young man who is handsome and has the six-pack abs and, has got the really firm body and so forth. The young men are proud of that strength. And so that also young women. And the beauty of the old men is the gray head. Why is that? Because the gray head tells you there's some experience there. Something that has transcends time. Something that has been gleaned from living. So the beauty of the old man is the gray head. It's an honor to be older. The blueness of a wound cleanses away evil. So do stripes the inward parts of the belly. There we have the same statement there as we have there in verse 27. The inward parts of the belly. So this is a man's chapter. There's so much more here. I hope you'll take time to read through it again. My few comments I hope will help. And make sure you get the outline and download it there on my-dailydose.com. All right, I hope to see you again next week on the School of Wisdom podcast. Hey, thanks for listening to the School of Wisdom podcast. If you're listening to this over YouTube, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time one of these podcasts is uploaded. I really appreciate all my followers, and I try to respond to each and every one of your questions. Come again next week, and we'll enjoy another lesson in the School of Wisdom.